Hello, welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, we love seeing you every Thursday night. We love seeing you live on Facebook or on YouTube, so if you're there, drop us a line and say hi. If not, watch us later. That's cool too. And we love all the interaction. Yeah, and you know what? We don't bring it up enough, but you can email us at themasonicroundtable@gmail.com. We do check that account pretty regularly. So if you have one of these weird questions, we'd love to hear it. Let's see. Who am I? You know me. My name is John Ruark. I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge, number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia. And next up for his introduction is Jason Richards. Hello and good evening, Jason. Wait.
Hello.
There's two of you.
Three.
That's like a mad scientist, evil genius stroke of the cat you got there.
Maniacal laugh.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Jason Richards here with Mary, past master of Vacation Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia, member of the Colonial Lodge number 1821 in Washington, D.C., and member of Lafayette number 79 in Zanesville, Ohio.
And what's the cat's name?
I introduced her.
No, this cat to your right, our left.
Oh, that cat. Oh, me.
Hi, my name is Nicholas Laine, worship brother Nicholas Laine, past master of Castle Island Virtual Lodge, past master of Burlington Lodge number 165 of the Lodge Canada, province of Ontario, and master-elect for Endeavour Virtual Lodge out of Victoria, Australia.
Woo!
Here live.
Yeah.
Nice. It's good to see you again because we've had
no
one.
CGI.
No, yes, it's a hologram. No, we've it's been years since we've probably had you on, Nicholas. So it's good to have you back.
Yes.
Awesome.
So I'm glad to be here, gentlemen.
Right, and it's fitting because tonight is one of the tech nerd episodes of TMR, so we probably lost half our viewers right there. But before we get into that, I want to thank all the patrons who've been supporting the show. You guys are awesome. If you want to get some behind-the-scenes stuff and support this show for many years to come, head over to patreon.com/the Masonic Roundtable, and that helps us keep things going and invite our Canadian brother to stay with Jason. So, very cool. Awesome.
I would offer that up even if people didn't pay us money for TMR.
No. Pay up or the
conflating two separate things.
Pay up or the Canadian gets it.
I say nothing.
Don't be sad. It's okay.
You're so polite.
I am. Did I say sorry yet? That's what we do as Canadians.
That's
sorry.
Representing our brothers to the north very well. So tonight's episode is one that it's interesting because we have our usual vocations as well, and you're going to see us weave some of those things in. You've heard me talk about Agile and Freemasonry. Got some background in the tech sector, and Jason is with his new role has really been nerding out on artificial intelligence, and the limited experience I have of that. There's some really cool things that you can do with the evolving field that is AI. And so tonight we're going to talk about what are some of the applications of AI to Freemasonry. How could that be used today, or what are some really cool things that, if trained well, that the insights that we could get out of our fraternity by the application of this new and interesting tool. So really, the first question.
There's the further question that we'll get to later on if we can truly recreate a strong AI or artificial consciousness. Could that consciousness ever be deemed a worthy and qualified Brother Mason?
To find out the answer, you got to stick around to the end of the show. So let's get to the fun
Jarvis.
part. Jarvis. Ooh.
Ultron.
You have to think of a really good Masonic AI brother name. So Hiram's too easy. You got to find something else that would be really kind of cool. But you can't spell Hiram without.
Well, we know what the AI master password's going to
Password.
1, 2, 3,
Admin.
4, 5.
All
Yeah,
lowercase.
admin. All right, Jason, what is AI? That's probably a good place to start for our non-techie brothers. What does it do for us? Why are we even talking about this?
So ultimately, if you look at the past, really 30, even 20 years of history, the advent of the internet, the information superhighway has, over the past several decades, given us access to more data than previously imaginable. And part of an unintended consequence of the mountains upon mountains of data that we find ourselves awash in today is mankind trying to figure out how to better make sense of all of it and how to better automate processes. And because it very much got to the point where we can't do all of the things that we need to do manually as humans, with all the calculations and our technology and all of the data that we want to analyze and sift through. And so one answer to how we make sense of the world around us today is artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence, little bit of a misnomer. It's technology that appears to learn and think like humans do. And that's very much something to be termed as like weak AI. There's a concept within AI called strong AI, which is things that Elon Musk is pushing toward, an artificial intelligence that actually is completely mimics the human consciousness to the point where it's indistinguishable between the two, and that does not exist yet. But AI in and of itself is kind of a blanket term that has four progressive subcomponents within it.
I was
So
going to ask,
think of like a matryoshka.
Is AI one thing, many things?
Ultimately, it's both. So if you think of a Russian nesting doll or a matryoshka, you have, AI is the outer layer. And then you pull off that outer layer, and a subcomponent of AI is machine learning. And you pull that off. Subcomponent to that is deep learning. And then the subcomponent to that is the neural network, which is essentially the building block of artificial intelligence. And so, going at kind of the most fundamental piece of artificial intelligence is something called a neural network. And essentially, it's an algorithm that essentially offers or it operates on kind of four components. There's an input, there is a weight to the inputs, there is bias toward and away certain inputs, and a threshold, and a set of rules on what happens if the threshold is exceeded or isn't met, and an output. And so essentially you can think of a neural network as a choose your own adventure book.
See, there we go. I loved those as a kid.
Yeah. So you make a bunch of if then decisions, and then you get out something that ostensibly is different from what you put in. When you get to deep, which is kind of that next layer up, deep learning is really essentially a neural network with three or more layers. And so you start layering these neural networks on top of each other, and they get much more complex.
So like you string the inputs and outputs together so you can really create some complicated multiple path, multiple spaghetti kind of diagrams. Okay.
So it's the idea is
More
that
of a
it's
mesh.
like networks of neurons in your brain all feeding off of each other.
Yeah.
And so as you make the learning more complex with more neural nets, that allows the capability to start learning and adjusting weights, measures, and biases on the fly, which is really the core of AI and machine learning. Moving up a layer to machine learning, you have kind of two main types. You've got the classical or like non-deep machine learning. This is machine learning that is wholly dependent on human intervention. There's always a human in the loop. You think of this like your CAPTCHAs. If you didn't know, every time that you have to prove you're not a robot by clicking all of the tiles, you are a human training an AI algorithm.
No, I just need to prove that I can tell where traffic lights are.
Yeah, or the boat. Don't forget the boat.
Or the boats.
The boat.
What a
Or
bus
the
looks
crosswalk.
like. A crosswalk.
Train. Yeah.
Yeah, and so
Where do
you
think
are
Google Maps
actually
gets its...
labeling images
right.
to train a computer vision set of deep learning.
And actually, fun fact, it goes back even earlier than that, because the first version of CAPTCHA, if you remember, it had like the wavy letters, because what it started with, it was always two words. There was a word that was pretty easy to read, and then there was this like word that looked a little smudged. And so the company behind it, which I think was acquired by Google, not 100% sure, they knew what the one word was, and they didn't know what the fuzzy word was. And so if you typed in the two words correctly, and it knew that you matched the first one, so it assumed you matched the second one correctly, and therefore you actually trained its book OCR scanning tool. So as Google was searching all the books, it couldn't translate into digital text what this written text was. You actually trained it that way as well, just by fuzzy. That's why it was fuzzy, because it was scanned in poorly or sideways or crooked. Yeah, so this has been going on for a long time.
Yeah, no, training optical character recognition, OCR, the foundation to NLP, which is natural language processing. I guess they're two separate things. NLP is much more complex, but that's so classical non-deep machine learning is doing CAPTCHAs, labeling images and words to then use that as training data for the machine learning algorithm. There's also deep machine learning, and this is machine learning based on the machine actually taking either a set of training that is fed into it, or just feeding your straight data into the machine and or into the machine learning algorithm, and the algorithm making sense of it and categorizing the different data as it sees fit. And that is deep machine learning predicated on little to no human intervention.
And that's still a bit short, right?
It is.
It's getting there.
It is. Ultimately, with deep machine learning, you constantly have to tune and tweak the models, and you have to feed it a ton of training data.
Well, and that's the real catch right there, right? So this AI stuff is not easy. I mean, the algorithms and tools and techniques have evolved where now we have large computing that can do this stuff rather quickly to put these pieces together. However, you can't just throw something at it and then magic happens, right? There's a lot of training that needs to go with that, because as I've heard it explained, right, a computer doesn't know what the rules are. It doesn't know if let's just say you're doing images and you want to feed it images of squares and compasses, right? It doesn't know what a square is. It doesn't know what a compass is. And so you need to feed it many images, some with squares and compasses, some without, and train it by saying, these are squares and compasses, these are not. And you have to do that, I don't know, a couple of million times before it actually becomes accurate enough that it's maybe a little bit higher, right? Depending on the...
No. It's on the order of hundreds of thousands, if not.
Yeah.
So then it can be reliable enough where you can do a Google search for squares and compass, and it comes up, automatically, not through human data labeling.
Yeah. So go into Google, do an image search for square and compass. That's a machine learning algorithm in Google that is returning all of those stock images of squares and compasses.
And that's the thing. If I were to draw a square and compass and put it on the internet today, right, as it gets indexed by Google, I don't need to label it anymore. It used to require Google used to read all the additional behind the scenes text web pages to try and correlate. Oh, this is a Freemason page, so that must be a square and compass. No more. Now, the computer vision has completely taken over, and they're actually able to do that reliably now. So when you search for
think about deep machine learning, you can also think about like virtual assistants, like
virtual bots,
Siri, Alexa, chatbots, things like that.
Yeah, we use those every day, and that's the other thing too. Like AI sounds futuristic. It's being used a lot more. Pretty much I'll tell you another cool fact that you probably didn't know about AI. McDonald's. If you ever go to a McDonald's now that has a digital ordering board, when you're talking to the machine and it puts your order up on the board, guess what? They're using AI on the board because I could probably find the article. What they're doing is they're showing different menu items at different times of the day at different locations to see what's more profitable, what sells more, what interests that patron at that location more. So literally AI at McDonald's, like you would never put those two words together, and yet it exists today for how they're training profitability and customer service. So it's happening. It's all around us, and it's but good AI should be invisible, right? It shouldn't be frustrating. It should be helpful.
Yeah, and ultimately, if we abstract things out to the final layer, that final layer is artificial intelligence or AI. It's the broadest term we have to classify machines or systems or algorithms that mimic human intelligence. We've got three main categories in science today of artificial intelligence. There's ANI, AGI, and ASI, artificial narrow intelligence, also known as weak AI. And this is what, Siri and Alexa and your Rocket chatbot all run off of.
Google
artificial narrow intelligence. There's also artificial general intelligence and artificial super intelligence. And the last two are considered strong AI, and neither of them actually exist yet.
So where do we put Watson?
So I would classify Watson as ANI. Watson was originally designed to play chess.
Right.
And so, weak AI is defined by its ability to complete a very specific task. Right. Now, Watson has grown quite a bit. But
still sits there, yeah.
For me, it's becoming more complex and more advanced, but it's still limited in its functionality. And when I see strong AI, I see AI fungibility and application across disciplines, being able to actively say, okay, what happens if I apply this logic in this completely other situation? All right, and that's what I think human beings, one of the things that sets human cognition apart is the ability to rapidly, there are certain things that he's really good at. There are certain things that humans really aren't good at. Our ability to problem solve and apply, things across different perspectives and disciplines is what sets us apart. Now, humans are really, really bad at like banal, like counting blocks or looking for patterns in data. Like the things that are super repetitive and boring, humans are terrible at. This is where deep learning and machine learning can come in, because computers are very, very good at calculating things.
Very good at boring
very
things.
Good at finding patterns.
Mhm.
Yes.
Very good at doing the same thing millions of times.
Yeah. There was a deep learning algorithm I read about a couple months ago that I think was designed for like pastry, categorizing breakfast pastry, and when applied to cancer imagery was able to actually be a very, very accurate, more accurate than humans, identifier of like precancerous cells, just because computers are so good at picking out patterns.
Yeah. And
so what does this all mean?
Yeah, exactly. Well, so before we get to that, like, so then what applications is AI being used for today, so then we can make that jump into Freemasonry? Because you can't just apply AI for like my blender, right? Not yet, at least. So there's got to be good applications for it, like reading images, reading text, inferring choices. There's
analyzing data, forecasting trends.
Forecasting trends, that's a good use case.
Like analyzing data, forecasting trends, looking at leading and lagging indicators of activity.
Mm-hmm.
Like the thing that pops to my mind invariably in this case is, okay, John, you're the membership data guru, right? What if we were able to record all of these indicators of activity, brethren who attend lodge, who didn't attend lodge, who didn't pay their dues on time, who paid their dues ahead, who were in one-day classes, the time between their degrees. What if we were able to feed that data into a deep learning algorithm? And or even frankly a classical machine learning algorithm, and just look for the patterns. Like, could we as an organization identify the members who were most at risk for demitting, most at risk for going payment of dues?
Yeah, that's fascinating, right? I mean, geez, if nothing else, it would like provide. I wouldn't say it would conclude, because there's always some brother who's going to have something to say, but it would end that argument of are one-day Masons, are they better Masons, or are they longer lasting Masons, or whatever, right? But we would be able to put all that in, look for trends, look for patterns, and do that across jurisdictions. Man, that would be great. Yeah, because step one is right, getting that data and loading it in there, and then finding,
teaching it.
Yeah, training it with all of the Grand Lodge membership data, to then look for patterns of raising date plus when they join independent bodies. Does that have a correlation with attendance in lodge and all that stuff? I mean, that would be fascinating to do, and you could do it all without having to build huge pivot tables like I've done in the past, right? Because that's the thing, right? Before, you'd have to know specifically the pattern you're looking for. When you have all this data pulled together in a big huge database, and I want to say, let me filter down this column and let me filter this and try to see, is there a pattern? And then there's still some human cognition left to interpret that data, where a lot of this stuff could be done near instantly.
Could we one day use deep learning to calculate the optimal dues structure and per capita structure to ensure the solvency of the lodge and the Grand Lodge based on the membership?
See, that's fascinating, because you got me thinking there. Because let's go back to the McDonald's signage, right? what they're doing is they're running millions of tests a day,
Yeah.
because of based on location, time, and order, what the order comes to be, and they are optimizing what seems to be either the most profitable or the best selling items of that time frame. And so imagine if you had your virtual secretary, right, that you got the dues card based off of all this criteria that you give in, right? And it could give you a different due structure that could, you know, be best for the lodge at that time, be best for you at that time. Yeah, that's just fascinating, right?
I think an
Anytime you talk
AI
about
for
dues.
secretary would be perfect, given that most secretaries don't show emotion.
Okay, let's talk about this.
Don't get me.
Otter.ai is one of my favorite transcription
Yes.
tools. Right?
Yeah.
So
I
Otter.ai
like that.
will let you either have an open mic in a meeting and then just let it pull people's conversations and then transcribe it. Some in real time, some it punts to the cloud to clean up.
Post-processing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it uses artificial intelligence to then spit back a cleaner transcript. And what it's already doing now is it'll even give you minute summaries, right? So you can have an hour-long conversation, and it can actually summarize at least keywords and the like from that meeting. So it would make for a lot shorter reading of the minutes, I'm sure.
One of the things that I really, really want to do at some point, I have no idea how I would even start doing it, is you've seen these news articles and these things on Reddit where someone trains, a convolutional neural network on like 100 hours of Batman movies, and then it has the AI create its own Batman movie. I would love to train a CNN on all of the TMR episodes that we've had to date, and then have it write its own episode of the Masonic Roundtable.
Man, Wake Up Sheeple 33 would just their head would explode based on this. That'd be funny.
Wouldn't it be fun to do the take a look at all the ritual and see the commonality and the differences across jurisdictions and countries? Do
Yeah,
that
that's
AI and
fascinating.
led to say, okay, so what does that look like from a ritual perspective?
Mm-hmm.
And see the commonality and the differences, right?
It would get to Scotland, it would just break.
That's
Yeah, you'd have us anyway.
But I mean, look,
Yes,
Scotland has like 100 different rituals.
well, look, you read a great book that's researched,
Yes,
like
agreed.
The Mason's Words by Robert Davis, where he actually traces a lot of the lineage of Preston and Webb, and how they even passed on their ritual schools down to other instructors that went around the country. Then it would be neat to then, to your point, Nicholas, see where the ritual carries across jurisdiction and like find over time which rituals sound the same. Yeah, you could trace basically you could trace the geography of ritual. That just blew my mind.
Yeah. It would be cool. I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, we've all been probably reading different jurisdictional ritual, and you're like, well, that's interesting. Why'd they do that?
Your mileage may vary in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's lots of places for it. I think even when you think about how to help mentor people, how about AI help mentor?
Yes.
Right? You're trying to mentor people, and we can't get a good mentor. Well, let's train an AI bot to go out and mentor the new guy. And then depending on how you answer questions, it can ramp up and ramp down where you're going to go. That would be cool for Masonry.
So that's interesting.
So an Alexa skill
right.
Juan Sepulveda needs to watch this episode. Create a new Alexa skill.
Yeah, and so that's interesting because I love my Google Assistant, right? And sometimes just playing around with it, you can have a conversation with it, and it tries to ask you follow-up questions, and it can even tell, like, from what I've heard and just kind of played around with, like, it can tell if you're having a bad day, and it'll say, like, tell me more, and, like, do you need any help? And I'm like, wow, because that would be great to turn that into, like, a mentor skill, right? To say, it's just...
Yeah. Could you imagine if your AI could help you with ritual?
Oh my
gosh. Long
gosh.
lecture that's 17 pages long.
What's AI good for?
Always that time. Why does the word always
What's AI good for? Good for repeatable processes. Yep. It's the same thing all the time.
It says to you, why'd you do that? No, that's the wrong word again, you goofy guy.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Those are my top 3.
It doesn't hit you with the book hard enough like my mentor did. You got it wrong.
Oh, we could though.
Smack.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. You just have to have the robotic.
We'll just...
Yeah, and then you can put then you can train the AI for the robot on the types of smacks that elicit the most favorable cognitive response.
Oh, I like it. Suncard19 in the YouTube chat has a great idea. Maybe the AI could synthesize a ritual that provides for the largest retention of membership.
That's a good one.
So the ritual will change based on...
Oh, no, we can't do that. Don't say change. That's bad.
It's innovation.
Some custodian in the work will go crazy. No. Let the ritual just fit the best and then freeze it for at least a year.
Preston's rolling in his grave right now. Yes.
So the concern there, though, is that, and I know this is semantics, but I'm going to put the stake in the ground anyway. There's so much more to the degree experience than just the words on the page. And so delivery is important as well. And so if we were going to try to find an optimal ritual, we would need to pair that with training an AI to find an optimal delivery.
No, that's up to us.
That's...
We need neural net. We're in a little chip that helps us do that delivery.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So the fascinating thing about a lot of these use cases is that they're really not outside of the reach of pretty much any Mason, because some of these tools are cheap and available today. I mean, just preparing a little bit that I know about things like Amazon Web Services, right? They have a whole category of AI services. Yeah, right there. Right,
it's kind of scary, actually.
Yeah, and the cool part about some of these, okay, so for pennies on the dollar, because this doesn't cost a lot, it's all running on the Amazon cloud. Analyze images and videos. Okay, so what would you do here? Like,
John, it's not pennies on the dollar. If you couldn't hear Nicholas mouthing.
Trust me, I've been doing work. It's not pennies on the dollar. Let's keep pretending.
Let's pretend.
It's inexpensive. Keep going.
Let's pretend it's inexpensive.
So I want to say here, the Masonic Roundtable is not liable for your AWS bill.
Correct.
If you set up the free tier and then decide to go whole hog into SageMaker,
just make sure that you have your Terraforms plug in, turning it off at about 7 o'clock at night.
Exactly. Don't leave them running. Don't leave them running.
And set your budget
threshold for the first alert.
Yes.
$5. Did that.
5.
Yeah.
Just 5. Okay.
Just $5.
Disclaimer. Moving on. Gotcha. So, okay. Analyze images and videos. How many video or pictures do we have in our lodge of our past masters, of all the events we've ever been to, right? Could you imagine dumping all of those lodge pictures across the world into a big bucket, right? And then being able to say, find Jason Richards. And you'll show Jason's lodge events, lodge pictures he's been to around the world, right? Or to say,
it's basically Facebook.
Right. So instead of having it on Facebook servers.
Keep going.
Okay. So then, another one that I find fascinating is extracting text and data.
Test
right?
data, yeah.
So because we even have things like, let me see if where is it? Kendra. Is Kendra on here? She's on here somewhere.
It's there somewhere.
Kendra. Starts with a K, ends with an Endra. There it is. Amazon Kendra, it uses machine learning to basically you'd throw a whole bunch of text at it, and then it makes it very easy to search and find and pull out that data. And by the way, you can just throw raw PDFs at it, docs, raw text. Like you can throw the whole kitchen sink at it. It will do the searching, indexing, and all that. So imagine again if you had the ritual, or if you had all these little knife and fork degrees and all that stuff. You just dumped it into one big data lake, and then you were able to just to search across that. You could find patterns. You could find quickly find specific things like, hey, I remember there was a funeral service in one state that talked about, you know, this other symbol that's unique to that state. You could search for the symbol, boom, it's going to show you exactly where that is without having to organize your file folders, anything like that. It's going to do it on the fly pretty quick. So there's just some really cool things that you can do today if you have the data to train it on.
Yeah. So there's one thing we probably should talk about before we get to the artificial consciousness piece, and that's ethical tech and ethics in AI, because that is something that is relatively new, but it's very, very big right now. Like, you know, Suncard 19 said, well, the Lodge can use AI to predict the quality of the year a candidate for master would provide for his lodge. Like, where's the boundary in, you know, using personally identifiable information and what could be considered private information to, you know, to provide insights to the fraternity, and where is that line drawn, and where should it be drawn? You want to use AI to vet a candidate?
Nope.
Like,
Ooh.
Nope.
I concur.
I'm getting
Nope.
the evil John is going
Nope.
down there. Oh, okay. Tell you what. Let's make it optimistic. How about this? Use AI to enhance the investigation committee. Still have a human override.
So you're going to get him to troll the internet for you using AI and using Azure to go and look for all those things to see
right.
if Buddy What's-It's on the beach somewhere inappropriately.
Whether that, or let's be glass half full people, because you can use any tool for evil, right?
Where are you storing that data?
We'll figure out.
How are you storing that data?
It's an open.
What happens
EC2 container?
Yeah. Yeah. What happens if you don't encrypt your S3 bucket?
Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's not indexable, right? Exactly.
Sure, you go with that.
Yet.
Yeah.
They've got AI models for that, you know.
They're going to sell it next month in preview, but anyway, go back to your concept there. I think what you're trying to say is that, you know, back to ethicals, you know, there's a lot of ethics and morals that we don't want to make the boundary over, specifically in Lodge. And the example you gave is, you know, do we want to do that initial candid review? And I think there's a bunch of those things you would have to kind of look at and go, you know, we in Lodge's now bylaws to talk about how we're going to do social media. How do you think we're going to have machine learning components in your bylaws that says, okay, this is what we're going to do? Could you imagine Grand Lodge if you said, okay, we need machine learning?
One of those fancy internet lodges, you know, somewhere up north would be a great candidate for this.
Yeah. I'll tell you how my form went for this month. See how my AI works on that. But you're right. And there's I think there's some good things, but I think you need to be careful, as you said, right? As we look at ethics and how we're going to work to that. And even when the AI starts to form itself, you know, how do you ensure that it doesn't go over that boundary?
Well, and like at the end of the day, how much do you trust the AI? Models drift. Models need constant vetting and retraining. And like it just gets the more calculations a system does without human intervention, the more complex and the more potential bias it has in it. Now, I know that human intervention also contains
Bias.
But
Yeah.
there was a comment in the chat about quantum computing.
Mhm.
And I'm like, yeah, if you if you think of AI decisions being made now at the speed of light, like
It's going to get bad.
like, yeah,
So
a million decisions being made in one, algorithm or model, and now being done in a fraction of the original time.
And then you put a Monte Carlo simulation on top of that, do 2 more, and then you see where you're doing.
Yep.
Nice.
And then it gets really bad. So it's like, I think the worst part is when you start talking about nesting different AI, and then you see crossover from different planes. And you talked about that earlier when you talked about nesting. Could you imagine now when you have quantum computing and you're nesting a bunch of different things? It's we're going to want to make sure we know how we store data. Let's just put it that way.
All right. So what if you had a Hiram in your pocket, right? You had a virtual assistant for Masonry that if you
Yeah, it's called Amity. Keep going.
Close. No, what? Okay, Amity on steroids, Amity on AI, right? What if
Amity on steroids?
Right. What if you're traveling, right? And it's just
No,
says, hey, just to let you know, there's a lodge that's 5 miles away that's having a meeting tonight. You don't need to search for it. It comes to you because it knows you're traveling out of your local area, and it pops that up.
Is that truly AI though, or is that just a
if it's context
proximity locator based on
if it's context I'm saying multiple variables that it considers to make that recommendation.
Okay.
Right, not just here's the closest one.
If it read your vacation, or if it read a business trip off of your calendar in which you didn't have any dinners scheduled, and then cross-reference that with your GPS data,
right,
and your hotel booking and the flight booking,
to
know where you're going to be, and did you rent a car? Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. So, will the app tell you what the lodge is having for dinner? You don't need to. It is a statistically significant correlation between lodges having dinner and lodges having green beans for dinner.
That is true. Yes, that is near 100%.
That is.
Yes, that's a southern thing. We don't do green beans in Canada.
Good. So
don't say that too loud. Joe's going to move up to. Joe's going to move north.
That's right.
Just because of you, I did green beans once.
So
John, didn't you get some green beans recently?
I did. They were delicious. So
probably an algorithm in that.
There's an algorithm that.
So let's get back to the bigger.
Let's get to the punchline then, Jason. Consciousness.
Yeah.
Consciousness. So when we talk about truly artificial consciousness, we are talking about that last echelon of AI, which is the artificial superintelligence. It is intelligence that mimics and or exceeds human consciousness in a way where it is indistinguishable, includes emotional response, that fungibility of concept across disciplines that you pointed out earlier.
Yeah.
Is there ever a case where, if we cannot distinguish between an artificial consciousness and a human consciousness, would there be a case for ever considering an artificial consciousness a worthy brother or worthy of receiving the degrees?
Yeah, my mind immediately goes to the landmarks, right? So could you construct an artificial consciousness that adheres to the landmarks in general, or Grand Lodge specific landmarks, right? Okay, so let's just call it out, right? Some of these include must believe in a supreme being, and must be well recommended. That's pretty easy. Usually recommended by the designer. Believe in a supreme being. Right? If the AI can believe in its creator, Jason Richards, then depending on the looser definition of supreme being in other jurisdictions.
What if the AI is manifesting its own consciousness and the AI believes itself to be the higher power?
I think we've seen that. There might have been.
I mean, it's called narcissism, but
yes.
Well, that too. You saw maybe a Star Trek episode
exactly.
somewhere.
Mm.
Yeah.
So if the AI is Q.
Mm-hmm.
If the AI is Q.
Right. There's a lot of
Can he
letters
be a
there.
Mason?
We have a landmark. Well, I guess it's not really a landmark, but just you must be a male in the fraternity, right? So I can change my Google Assistant voice right now into a male voice.
So this gets into a really interesting topic of conversation today that I don't want to broach too much into just because it's a hot topic, but gender is a complex conversation and a complex identification these days, and so the question really becomes a both a philosophical and a biological one of, absent a corporeal form, or perhaps a corporeal form if you're in Japan, could an AI consciousness assign itself gender? I don't know.
It's like 4D chess right there.
Yeah.
Would it want to?
Would it see the need?
Yeah, exactly.
If it was required training data to get into Freemasonry, right?
Yeah, but still, you're an AI.
Mm-hmm.
If
that's the path, right? Because otherwise, you're going to learn that you won't get into Freemasonry if.
That's a different question. That's yeah. The first question that Jason was asking was, would an AI required to decide if it needed identification using the sex?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's what I'm saying, is that if that is a criteria upon entry, then it would logically follow that to get to the outcome that it's trying to get to, it would actually assign itself. So
that brings me back to an article I read a couple weeks ago. I'm gonna have to find it, where there have been studies that have shown that there have been AIs that have taught themselves to cheat because it more easily enables them to get to the desired outcome.
Right.
Amazing that would ever happen.
Just like lying on your petition.
AI and a 5-year-old kid have a lot in common.
Yes.
No, I didn't do that.
Or 35-year-old man.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. So then. Yeah,
difficult. There's a lot of those little topics and subtopics as you get closer to say, could AI become,
indistinguishable from human consciousness?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's that. I'm just thinking, should or could they ever become, a Mason, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right.
There's enough of those nuances across the board, right? We talked about landmarks. We talked about there's certain things in each of our jurisdiction that you have to have done.
Right.
Okay. You're over the age of 21. Okay, Mr. Neural Network. How do you work on that? Is that hours, days, teraflops per second? Like, I know.
Through decisions made, right?
Yeah. Yes, they've made more decisions.
You base the maturity off of the number of neural networks and the complexity of the decision-making framework.
You mentioned sending that to grandma.
Hey,
can you figure that out?
The first algorithm just needs to have run in 2001, and you're good. So, right.
Don't make me feel that old, dude.
Yes, that's not that long ago. It's really not that long ago.
Yeah, that's true. And neural networks have been around since then, right?
Well, AI as a discipline's been around since the late 50s as a computer science discipline. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Good old 386.
Yes. Nice.
Using Q and X. Remember that? No.
I don't.
Okay, never mind.
I've had 386.
Real-time operating system in Unix. Yeah,
nice.
Never mind. Anyway.
I'm not a programmer, though, so I got to pass on that one. Anyway. Again, I can work out like Hello World and Python, and that's about all I can do.
Come on, I can do that. I can do it in Visual Studio. I'll show you later.
Import space ArcPy. That's all I know.
So if those are the kind of the barriers, we talk about, the concept of doing it. How do our Grand Lodges even get across that?
Yeah.
That would be fun to watch. Just saying.
I think you're right. Part of AI training too is the edge cases, looking at the things that don't follow the easy black or white answers, but that go beyond that. So again, like this is what Tesla's doing right now. Every time they do their autopilot and the user has to take over the wheel to avoid something in the road, guess what?
That never happens.
It never happens. But hypothetically, if it ever did, then taking over that actually sends the snapshot of data of what happened back to Tesla, so it trains that thing. So the same thing would be true in Freemasonry. So what I'm thinking about that, as far as edge cases go, is we have tons of edge cases in Freemasonry. Tons of edge cases. When you read stories about women that got initiated because they had overheard, a lodge meeting, or you hear about transgender issues between states, right, or between jurisdictions. That there have been edge cases that either violate the letter of the law but not the spirit of the law, and vice versa, right? I mean, so there's all this wiggle room to play with that have already existed today, right? These are not hypotheticals; they've actually happened, and so to then say. Because I'm a big guy, like looking at precedent, right? I want to see. I'm a big guy on precedent. So if someone says, "Hey, should we allow this?" I'd say, "Where have we seen it before?" Right? And if you can show me a case that something similar or like that has happened before, then I think it's open for allowing it, or at least adhering to the results of the previous case. So.
And John, one of the things that I think would be a great thing about this would be it would force Freemasonry as an institution to make decisions and really dive into some of these edge cases, because you ask, well, how would Grand Lodge react to this? I think a lot of Masonic leadership tends to either shut stuff down entirely or just ignore the situation and pass it off to the next guy in the Grand East. And if there were a way to war game out all of the edge cases of Freemasonry, I think it would be a boon to leadership to be able to see potential scenarios and how they might play out.
All right, so all I'm asking
for be to the betterment of our organization.
All I'm asking for is an AI-created real-time educational program that meets the time constraints and actually gives knowledge that's based on all the attendees' interest level, and gets them some way that they can leave being a better man through Masonry after that meeting.
Good, cheap, and fast. Pick one.
That's right. Okay.
Tell them that triangle of happiness.
The triangle of happiness. Good,
I mean, usually they say pick two.
Pick two.
But I'm being very realistic here. You pick one, you might get it.
I'll just be happy with any education. Okay, here we go. Let's get to wrapping things up, and we'll start with Jason and Brother Nicholas and ask, probably, I guess, the big elephant in the room. would you accept a well-trained AI that had met all the landmarks, that had met all the criteria to go through a recognized jurisdiction's initiation process? Would you accept them as a brother? And if so, why? And if not, why not? Brother Nicholas.
See, I knew you'd say why not. Oh,
There's a way you ask that question though that I think makes it a much easier answer, but I'll let you go.
okay, thanks. Thinking on the fly. I'm going to say no. And I still want the ability for us. So I'm going to ask it. I'm going to spin it to you differently.
Mm-hmm.
So if we let AI come, how do we then enlighten AI on its own path when now it's sitting as AI? How does it get, we use the bad catchphrase, make a good man better. How do you make AI even better now that you've let AI in to become a Mason?
Well, you feed him this book, then you feed him that book.
Of Freemasonry.
Then you feed him this book, then you feed him that book, then you feed him that book.
Well, so that's what I mean. So
yeah,
I think the idea of having a cognizant, like let's use Q as an example. I don't want Q and Lodge with me, because you would also remove all the emotional components, which would be good because then we wouldn't have all those other.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a lot of drama sometimes.
So, and then what would it do?
It depends, though.
Well,
the emotional piece
that you put in the cross matrix. Yes,
so
I got
strong,
that too.
Strong AI is intrinsically designed to have that emotional construct as well.
Yeah,
it's like Data with the emotion chip.
Nice, good reference.
So if it's close to Data with the emotion chip, I'm okay. We should have another idea, and we should talk to Brett Springer or whatever. I think that was his last name. Data from
Brett Spiner.
That guy. Yeah, that guy. But no, I don't think so.
No. Okay. What say
That's
you,
my
Jason?
answer.
So the way you ask the question is if an AI met all the landmarks for initiation and essentially was initiated, would you accept an AI construct as a brother? And I would say if the AI construct were admitted and initiated in a regular lodge, that makes it a very easy conversation. So yes, they are a member of a regular jurisdiction. Now, where Nicholas is going, I respect where you're going. So I'm not going to say wrong off the bat.
I'm okay if you do.
I think we are very much still thinking in the construct of AI as it is today, which is weak AI or artificial narrow intelligence. As we progress to a point where artificial consciousness either exceeds or is indistinguishable from human consciousness, I think that opens the door to acceptance, again, provided that those landmarks are met to the satisfaction of the governing body and jurisdiction in Freemasonry. There are different, rules of entry for different grand jurisdictions.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so, taking kind of the low-hanging fruit example, in Tennessee,
just where I was going to go.
Members of the LGBTQ community from membership. That is not the case in DC. And so, if a member of that community is a brother who is initiated in DC and then goes to Tennessee, a Tennessee Mason
so
that has amity with the Lodge of DC has to accept that.
Them, yeah.
And that was the negative edge case, right? Of it got denied in one place, but yet it was allowed in another place. And so another thing that was interesting about that case recently was that there was some pulling of recognition, but only from Grand Lodge officers and not of the brothers themselves. I don't know if that was related to the same case or not, right? So again, the ability to travel would be interesting too, because it's a way to be brotherly and respect this as a universal fraternity while still having the diplomatic challenges of recognition, despite every jurisdiction doing it just a little bit differently depending on their code.
Freemasonry is the United Nations.
Yeah.
As long as you belong to a member country that's recognized by enough members.
So yeah, Castle Island Virtual Lodge, for example, right? That you have the ability to create a virtual lodge that is not on most. Wait a minute, that doesn't seem regular. I'm like, look, list of lodges Masonic. It's right there. It's in the book. And you have to like shove it in their nose for them to accept it. So the same will absolutely be true if we ever got to one. All it takes is one recognized jurisdiction to recognize an AI brother, and then the fun begins.
And I would say the other thing too is what value does that AI brother bring to the fraternity?
Holy smokes! Let me just say, I'll put my bet on the AI.
It knows the optimal way to take good men and make them better.
Okay.
And make green beans. Yes.
Perfect
Obviously.
Green beans every time.
Every meal.
Based on. So what it will do is it will take into account the individual tastes of the lodge members,
right,
and come up with an optimal preparation of green beans, which will be canned and soggy with dried chicken.
Nice. How did you know what we're having tomorrow? All right, good stuff. Thank you, brothers. I guess it's over to me, and let's see.
Over to you. So, John, what do you think?
What do I think?
Did you do it?
Thank you. What did I do it? Yes, and I think under obvious, clear criteria and conditions, I wouldn't just let anything through. But would I accept something that had already been recognized by another jurisdiction as a brother? Absolutely.
He's already submitted a petition for his Tesla.
Yes, yes. So Sophia is gonna be initiated next week. So there's be a lot of huge caveats that go with that, right? Because I'd want to make sure that, I mean, again, what makes you and I brothers as far as the literal, the exoteric, the letter of the law, and then there's the spirit of the law, right? How can we have this tie that binds, right? And we have, other than just being a dues card carrying member, there's something else behind that we've all gone through the same initiatic experience, that we've have a shared experience, that we've we see the world through a different lens. And so I guess what I'm saying is it's twofold, that it has did it follow all the laws of Masonry to be compliant with that in whatever way, shape, or form, but then on the below the surface, could I have a conversation with it? Could it me working with it make me a better person? Just the same way that when I see you guys, that it makes me a better person to be with you. So that would be my first and second pass on that. I think it literally, yeah. I mean, if you follow the rules, come on in. Then after that, are you really a brother? Then that's where the fun begins. Awesome. Yeah. Well, hey, this was a fascinating conversation. Thank you, Brother Nicholas, for coming down and enjoying hopping in on the conversation. That was a lot of fun. Jason, I love you, big nerd. And for all of you watching, keep searching for more light. Have a good night.